to ordain Calvin Robinson after he'd done his studies that you have to do. And so there was that whole thing, and he was very upset, and so on and so on. But of course, he did get ordained in the end, and he was ordained by the Free Church of England, which I'd never heard of before. Who's the Free Church of England? So the Free Church of England ordained Calvin Robinson. So I checked out, well, the Free Church of England have been around since the 1700s. For some reason, they broke away from the main body, but they are still considered part of the Anglican community. But the Free Church of England have not compromised their moral values. They stick with biblical values, the Old and the New Testament, the Ten Commandments and the Two Commandments, Beatitudes, and all of those good things. So he was ordained by the Free Church of England. So I thought, well, this is very interesting. Well, it turns out that Calvin Robinson's church is actually it's a bus ride away from where I live. So I've been going to Calvin Robinson's church, and it's very nice. I'll recommend it to anyone. It's in Harlesden, in northwest London, and it's a small church. It has a nice congregation. It's just got that nice feel of a wholesome and nice church. We go there, and he does, gives the sermon and the service, and it's nice. You have tea and biscuits and cake afterwards, and you chat, and then he rushes off to his TV shows, GB News. But the point is that the Free Church of England, there's not just one. They're all over the country. There's not as many of them, obviously, as the C of E, but the church, the English, do have their church right now. It is called the Free Church of England. So if you can find one, go there. And obviously there are other churches, Baptist churches and so on, and that may be perfectly wholesome and so on. So I'm not suggesting everyone's horrible, but so that's an important thing that is there now. So there is that opportunity. There was something else. Oh yes, yeah, really important thing. The problem with Marxism attacking religion or faith or the concept of God because it's not scientific, right? Well, those days are over, finished, right? We are moving out of the atheistic age, and I just want to, so one of the important things why Christianity became accepted in Rome, it wasn't just because the Emperor Constantine had a vision of the cross in the sky before he went to battle. Yes, that was part of it. It's what made Christianity legal and then later official in Rome. But there was another aspect. There was the fact that there were Christian philosophers, the most famous one, early one, being Origen. And these Christian philosophers maybe had been like they followed Greek philosophy, like Aristotle and Plato and so on, and they became Christian. And Origen in particular, he was in Alexandria, and he set up a school of philosophy which incorporated Aristotelian philosophy and Christian and Judaic philosophy. And the thing was that the Greeks, even at the time of Jesus, were very interested in what the Jews were teaching, because they were the only religion that were monotheistic. And the Greeks were very interested in trying to understand the origin of life, the origin of the universe. So, you know, Plato and Aristotle, they argued about, you know, where was the origin of the universe? Was it outside the physical world, or was it inside the physical world? They understood that there was something, they didn't know what to call it, but spirit, they were looking for God. And in basically, even if they didn't call it that, but, and of course the Jews were the only people who were monotheistic. And at the time of Jesus, there were more Jews outside of Judea in the Mediterranean world than were in it, in fact. And the synagogues were places of philosophical discussion. Many Greeks would go there and they would discuss and argue and talk about philosophical things and so on. And many Greeks became kind of like half Jews. They didn't go for the circumcision bit, so they kind of didn't become full members. They were associate members, right? But because they were interested in this concept of one origin of the universe, one beginning point, this was very interesting for them. And of course, this translated over into the Roman Empire. And in the upper circles of Roman society, you know, everyone, it's a bit like today, you Guardian readers, you know, you have to be intellectual, right? People wanted gnosis, knowledge, right? So the upper classes, the educated classes were interested in gnosis. Well, and of course, therefore, they were looking at the Greek philosophers, among others. And when people like Origen came along, they fused Christianity with Aristotle. Now, Aristotle was science. It was called natural science. They looked at the natural world and tried to understand it. And that was the origin of science. But it was science where they were looking for the origin, they were looking for spirit. And Origen, as one, and there were others, became very, very famous. He was at one point, he was teaching the mother of one of their emperors. So Christianity got into the intellectual elite of Roman society. This was very important. So yes, there was the martyrdom of thousands, and there was, you know, the Roman emperor, you know, having visions of the cross and so on. But this was also very important. That's how Christianity, you know, it was science and faith, science and religion, because it's a you have to have a true worldview that incorporates the internal and the external, the spiritual and the physical. If God exists, then he's the origin of both the spiritual and the physical. They must be related together. They must interact. So, and this is what Origen and his colleagues were doing. And that's how it became, Christianity became well accepted within the intellectual elite of Rome. So now where are we today? When we look at that today, we're far away from that because of Marxism and the materialist philosophers that came out of the Enlightenment. They ditched the spirit out of philosophy, and they became materialists. And materialist philosophers basically dominated the foundations of philosophy, which means you know, academia, which means education, and so on and so on. And ultimately you got Marx. And what happened for Marx, the greatest thing that happened for Marx was Darwin. When Darwin came along with the theory of evolution, Marx was, he was ecstatic, because Marx had his theories that he'd developed, and then he took evolution and he put them together with his theories, and he said, now I've got a scientific theory that the revolution and the development of a communist society is inevitable. It's a scientific fact, and of course everyone believed it, and they followed Marx and so on, and it dominated the intellectual world and ultimately the political world. And then we had the Russian Revolution in 1917. But what happened then was, by the 1930s, it was clear that Marx's predictions were not coming true. And what you had was the communists and the Nazis in Germany were competing for power, control over Germany. And the communists realized that Marxism was become discredited. So you had what's known as the Frankfurt School of philosophers. They had to get out of Germany because, well, it wasn't a good atmosphere for them. And they went to America, they went to New York. And over a period of time, they developed what ultimately became critical theory, right? Critical theory, initially it was applied in the legal realm, but then from there they expanded critical theory into race relations, into feminism, into the sexual identity, gender identity, and they took aspect of Marx's original theory, and then they applied it into, which we don't have time to go into, and I'm not an expert anyway. They applied that into these realms, and that's why you have what we have today. We call it, we can generalize it as wokeism, but fundamentally they undermine and create conflict, and that is the result of that. But now what we have is the end of that, because we have the end of evolutionary theory. Right, who believes in evolution here?
Me.
I've gone along with it.
Yeah, we've gone along with it. We've gone along with it because there was nothing else, and we're told that it's scientific. Well, if I tell you and stand up here saying to you that evolution is fake science, it's not real, it's completely false.
Here.
It is completely false. Evolution, many Christians have gone along with evolution and tried to match evolution and the creation story and so on, and in the Bible, and kind of mix it together and see if it can work. And that's a natural thing. You think, well, if this is the real science, then there must be this connection. It's a natural thing to think this way. But now we have come to the point where the days of evolution theory, I will proclaim to you today, evolution is over, finished, dead, right? And why is it over, finished, and dead? Because we now have something called intelligent design, right? And intelligent design is not there's something called creationism. We've all heard of creationism. It's an American thing. It's come out of evangelical Christianity in America. And it's an attempt to make the Bible and science fit together. But it's not truly scientific. There's some good elements to it, but it's a kind of pseudoscience. But intelligent design is a product of serious scientists, not religious scientists, maybe one or two of them maybe, but they are serious scientists. There's a school of intelligent design, and I suggest that you go to there's a website for it, if I can find it. I think it's intelligentdesign.org, if I remember rightly, and there are a number of people you can look at. Yes, so the two people I would suggest that you look at, and you'll find them on YouTube. Michael I don't know how to pronounce it, Behe, and he talks about molecular machines and the theory of irreducible complexity, right? And then the other one is Stephen Meyer, and he's written a book called Darwin's Doubts and Return of the God Hypothesis. Now, if you're not a reader, you'll find you'll find his videos on YouTube, his lectures, and everything that he's got to say in his books are in his lectures, and you'll find them. But they're not the only two. There are quite a few others of different disciplines in this intelligent design. Now, a lot of them are not saying God created the universe. They're just saying we have discovered, and we say we have come to this conclusion that through our study, that there is no other conclusion that we can come to, that there is an intelligence in the design of the universe, or in biology and so on. It's not possible for what we observed to come about by accidental process. This is what they're saying. They're not saying, well, it's the God of Jesus or whatever. They're not saying that, although maybe one or two of them might be Catholic or whatever, but that's not their job, because they're scientists. You make up your mind, but the point is the days of accidental mutations creating things and so on, they're over, they're finished. Now, there's probably a massive number of scientists who already understand this, but they're not saying anything. And then there are a lot of scientists who are obviously invested in the concept of evolution. The fact that Darwin's theory of evolution was, proven untrue years ago, and that's why we have what's known as neo-Darwinism, the theory of development through random mutations. That's neo-Darwinism. Darwin didn't know about mutations. He had a different theory of what created change. And that was disproved a long time ago, but it was kept a bit quiet, and it wasn't really talked about in the education system. So Darwin is still the darling in the education system, and neo-Darwinism, random mutation, is still, what's touted as what causes, evolutionary processes and so on, one species to another and so on. But and of course the final one is the mathematics. There's a video you can watch. It's called Mathematical Challenges to Darwin's Theory of Evolution, and it's on YouTube. The title is it's Uncommon Knowledge with Peter Robinson. That's the series of lectures, and it's the account is Hoover Institution. That is the YouTube channel, Hoover Institution. So Mathematical Challenges to Darwin's Theory of Evolution. There was some years ago a big conference of mathematicians, the top mathematicians in the world, and they debated the mathematics of evolution, and they came to the conclusion, no, absolutely no way is it possible. So therefore we are at the end of the period of evolutionary science. We're at the end of materialism. We're at the end of atheism, and we're moving into the next period and the next stage. And the Housing Party UK are right on the cusp of that change. So I'm so glad to have met you and to be allowed to speak here today.
Hey!